The sky above the silver forest was quiet, and only the sound of Thomas's boots pressed against the strange ground broke the silence. He was part of a small Earth survey crew, one of 6 who had landed on this new world. Their mission was simple: check if the planet could hold resources, scan for signs of life, and move on. For the others, it was routine. For Thomas, it was different. He was the communication officer, a man who had always been curious about voices, stories, and connections. While the engineers studied the soil and the scientists tested the air, Thomas often wandered, letting his eyes search for something the machines could not see. The planet was unlike any he had known. Tall silver trees stretched upward, their branches glowing faintly when touched by light. Lakes shimmered as though stars had fallen into their waters. The air was soft, carrying a faint scent of metal and flowers. It felt like the whole land had been waiting for someone to notice it. Thomas walked along a path that was not really a path, more like a natural opening through the trees. He carried his small scanner at his side, though he was barely using it. He wanted to see the world with his own eyes, not through blinking lights. After a while, he reached a wide clearing. In the center of the clearing stood a formation of stone pillars, each carved with markings too precise to be natural. His heart raced. These were not random rocks. They were signs. Someone had been here, someone intelligent. He stepped closer, brushing his hand over one of the carvings. The lines were sharp, flowing into shapes that hinted at meaning, though he could not read them. They felt alive under his fingers. That was when he heard it. A sound like a voice, soft and clear, coming from behind him. He turned quickly, his hand tightening on his scanner. She stood there, half hidden among the silver trees. At first, Tomas thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. The figure was tall, her skin faintly glowing as though it reflected the forest's light. Her hair fell in waves that looked like strands of glass, catching every glimmer around her. Her eyes were large, dark, and filled with curiosity. Thomas froze. He had trained for the possibility of alien life, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. His mouth felt dry, yet he forced himself to speak. "Hello," he said, his voice steady but soft. The woman tilted her head. For a moment, she only studied him. Then she stepped into the light of the clearing. Her movements were graceful, almost like flowing water. She did not seem afraid. "You are not from here," she said in words that were strange yet clear. Her voice carried a musical tone as if each sound was part of a song. Tomas's heart leaped. She spoke his language, or at least something close enough. "No," he answered. "I came from far away. From the stars." Her eyes widened slightly and a faint smile touched her lips. "I know the stars. I have watched them for a long time." Thomas lowered his scanner, showing he meant no harm. "My name is Thomas," he said. "I am with others, but I am the only one here now." The woman placed her hand on one of the stone pillars, almost as if introducing herself through it. "I am Alira," she said at last. The name felt gentle, like the sound of wind through leaves. Thomas repeated it quietly. "Alira." She watched him closely, as though measuring his heart through his words. Then she stepped closer, and he saw more details of her face. It was unlike any human face, but carried a beauty that was hard to describe. Her features were smooth, her expression calm yet alive with something he could not name. "What do you want here?" she asked. Thomas took a breath. "We came to study the world, to see if it holds life or resources. We are explorers." Alira nodded slowly. "Your people always search, always reaching for what is far." There was no anger in her words, only observation. Thomas felt she had been expecting him for a long time. He looked at the stone pillars again. "Did your people build these?" Her eyes grew distant, as if memories passed before her. "Yes, long ago my people built many places like this. We remembered the stars, we carved their patterns into stone. But the world grew quiet, and many of us are gone." Her voice carried no bitterness, only sadness. Thomas felt a weight in his chest. She was not just someone he had met. She was the last echo of a people fading into silence. "I am sorry," he said softly. She tilted her head again, studying him. "Why are you sorry?" "You did not take them from me." "Because I can feel your loss," Thomas said, "and I know what it is like to be alone." Alira's eyes softened, and for the first time she stepped closer. She stopped just a few feet from him. "Alone," she repeated, as if testing the word. "Yes, I know that feeling well." They stood in silence for a while, only the sound of the silver leaves above filling the air. Thomas felt something he had never felt on any mission before. He was not just an explorer meeting an alien. He was a man meeting another soul. Finally, Alira asked, "Will your people stay here?" Thomas hesitated. "I do not know. Our orders are to study, then move on. That is what we always do." Alira looked down at the stone pillars. Move on, always moving, never staying. Her voice carried a quiet ache. Thomas wished he had something more to give her than simple words. Still, he tried. "Maybe it does not have to be that way. Maybe we can choose to stay even if only for a while." She looked at him, her eyes shining faintly. "You are different from the others I have seen." Thomas blinked. "You have seen others like me?" "Not here," she said. "From afar. I have watched your kind through the skies, through the machines you send. I listened to your voices, though I could not always understand. You are loud, full of energy, but you also carry something my people lost." "What is that?" Thomas asked gently. Alira's gaze held his. "Hope." The word hung in the air, simple yet powerful. Thomas felt it stir inside him. She was right. Humans carried hope even in the darkest places. It was what had brought them to the stars. Before he could answer, a faint beep came from the small communicator on his belt. The crew was calling him back. He looked at it, then back at Alira. "I have to return," he said. "They will wonder where I am." Alira did not move, but her eyes followed him closely. "Will you come back?" Thomas did not hesitate. "Yes, I will come back." For the first time, her lips curved into a true smile. It was a small smile, but it carried warmth that reached him deeper than words. He turned, walking back toward the trees. Every step felt heavy, as though part of him wanted to stay in the clearing with her. As the silver branches closed around him, he looked back one last time. Alira was still standing among the stone pillars, her glowing form blending with the forest, yet her eyes never left him. Tomas knew then that his journey on this planet had just begun. What started as a simple mission had become something more. He was no longer just an explorer. He was a bridge between two worlds, drawn by a voice that had been waiting in the silence. And deep inside, he already knew he would return to her. The next morning, Thomas was restless. He sat inside the survey ship as the others checked their readings and samples, but his mind was far away. He kept thinking about Alira, about her quiet voice and her eyes that carried both sorrow and light. The captain, a steady man named Hale, asked Thomas to prepare reports for the communication logs. Thomas nodded and worked with his hands, but his thoughts drifted to the silver forest and the stone pillars. He wondered if Alira would still be there. He wondered if she was waiting. When the tasks were done, Thomas asked for permission to explore the northern section of the forest. Hale agreed, since they needed more ground data anyway. Thomas left quickly, walking with more purpose than the day before. His heart beat faster with each step. The forest greeted him again with its glowing branches and shimmering leaves. He followed the same path through the natural openings until the clearing appeared ahead. For a moment he feared it would be empty, but then he saw her. Alira stood by the stone pillars, her hand resting on one of the carvings. She turned when he entered the clearing. Her face carried no surprise, as though she had known he would return. "You came back," she said. "I said I would," Thomas answered, smiling. She studied him for a moment, then gave a small nod. "Most who leave do not return." "You are different." Thomas stepped closer. "I want to learn. About you, about your people, about this world." Alira's eyes softened. "And I wish to learn about yours. We may share." That was the beginning. They spent hours together in the clearing. Alira told him stories of her people. She spoke of tall cities built from crystal and stone, places that once glowed like the forest itself. She described skies filled with ships that traveled between stars, long before Thomas's ancestors had even left their own world. But time changed everything. Wars, sickness, and pride had reduced her people. Many had vanished, and the rest withdrew into silence. The ruins of the stone pillars were among the last memories left. When she spoke, her voice carried no anger, only quiet remembrance. Thomas listened carefully, trying to see those shining cities in his mind. He could almost imagine them alive with light now fallen to dust. In return, Thomas shared what he could. He told her about Earth. He spoke of oceans that stretched farther than the eye could see, of mountains that touched the clouds, of forests filled with life and sound. He explained how humans had struggled, how they had fought wars too, but how they always rose again. He told her about music, about the way people gathered to sing and dance. Alira listened with wide eyes, asking him to describe the sounds. Thomas sang a short melody, soft and simple, one his mother had once hummed to him. The notes carried gently into the air. Alira closed her eyes. "It is beautiful," she whispered. "Your kind creates songs out of feeling. My people once did this, but we forgot." Thomas looked at her closely. "Then maybe I can remind you." The days that followed became a pattern. Thomas found reasons to return to the forest. Each time Alira was there, waiting among the pillars. They spoke, they shared, and slowly their bond deepened. One afternoon, Alira led him away from the clearing, deeper into the woods. She moved gracefully, never hesitating, as though she had walked the path countless times. Thomas followed, careful not to disturb the glowing plants that lined the way. At last they reached a hidden valley. In the center stood ruins of an old structure, half buried by vines and silver trees. Its walls were carved with more symbols, though much larger than the ones on the pillars. The carving stretched high, telling a story in images. "This was once a hall of memory," Alira said softly. "My people came here to remember our journeys. Each carving tells of what we were." Thomas stepped closer, running his hand lightly over the stone. He saw figures carved into the surface, tall beings with shining forms, ships flying among stars, and cities that rose like towers of light. His heart swelled with awe. "Your people were incredible," he said. "You built so much." Alira's eyes held sorrow. "We built, but we did not endure. We lost the meaning of our own creations." Thomas turned to her. "But you are still here. That means something. You carry their memory. You are proof that it is not lost." For a moment, Alira said nothing. Then she gave him a long, searching look. "You believe in carrying hope even when the end seems near. That is why you are different." They walked through the ruins together. Thomas asked about each symbol, and Alira explained what little she still remembered. Some parts were forgotten, lost even to her, but the way she spoke revealed a deep longing to hold on to what remained. When the sun of the planet began to sink, casting the valley in silver shadows, they returned to the clearing. Thomas felt a strange pull inside him, a desire to protect this place, to keep Alira's memories alive. Another evening, Thomas brought something with him. It was a small device, no bigger than his hand. When he touched it, a soft light projected from its surface, showing simple images and sounds. It was an earth tool used for training, but Thomas had changed the files. He showed Alira pictures of human families, of laughter, of children running across fields. He played short clips of music, letting the sounds rise into the air. Alira's face glowed as she listened, her dark eyes wide with wonder. "This is your world," she whispered. "Yes," Thomas said. "It is not perfect. We make mistakes, but we keep moving forward. We do not let go of tomorrow." Alira touched the light with her fingers as if trying to hold it. "I wish my people had not forgotten such things." "You have not forgotten," Thomas said gently. "You are here. You remember. That means you can still pass it on." Her eyes lifted to his. "Perhaps, but only if someone stays to listen." The words sank deep into Thomas's heart. He thought about his crew, about Hale's orders, about the mission. They were here to scan, collect, and leave. Nothing more. But he could not see Alira's world as just another line in a report. It was alive. She was alive. One night, as they sat beside the shimmering lake near the clearing, Thomas asked a question that had been growing in him. "Why did you come to the forest? Why were you waiting at the pillars?" Alira gazed at the water, her reflection glowing faintly. "Because I felt it. A change in the air. I knew someone would come. I did not know who, but I hoped." Her voice trembled slightly, the first sign of uncertainty Thomas had seen from her. "And then you came," she said softly. "You spoke to me not as a stranger, but as if I mattered." Thomas's chest tightened. "You do matter, Alira, more than you know." Silence followed, filled only by the gentle ripple of the lake. In those days, Thomas felt something shifting within him. He no longer saw himself as only a member of the survey crew. He felt tied to the silver forest, to the ruins, and most of all to Alira. She was not just an alien woman. She was the last voice of a people who had almost vanished. And somehow she trusted him, a man from far away, to hear her story. As the days passed, the connection between them grew stronger. They laughed at small things, shared stories of fear and courage, and sometimes simply sat in silence, letting the forest speak around them. Thomas knew that soon the crew would be ready to leave the planet. Their mission was almost complete, but the thought of saying goodbye to Alira filled him with a weight heavier than any duty. For now, he chose not to think of leaving. For now, he stayed in the forest, listening, learning, and sharing hope with the woman who had been waiting in silence. And deep inside, both of them began to realize that what they had found was not just friendship or curiosity. It was something far greater, something that would test the strength of both their hearts. The survey ship stood in the middle of a wide plain, its silver hull gleaming under the pale light of the planet's twin moons. Inside, the crew worked steadily. Boxes of samples lined the floor, data files filled the computers, and the mission report was nearly complete. Captain Hale gathered the team around the main console. His voice was firm as always. "We've collected enough. This world has little for us. No resources we can use, no colonies to find. We will lift off in 2 days. Prepare the ship," the others nodded. Some looked relieved, eager to return to orbit and set course for the next world. For them, this planet was just another stop. Thomas sat quietly, his hands folded. His heart sank at the captain's words. 2 days. That was all the time left. He wanted to speak, but the words caught in his throat. He knew what Hale would say. The mission came first. Always the mission. After the meeting, Tomas walked outside. The night air was cool, carrying the faint glow of the silver forest in the distance. He stared toward it, his thoughts heavy. Alira would be waiting. She trusted him to return, but how could he tell her the truth? How could he explain that humans would leave as quickly as they came? He returned to the forest the next day. Alira stood by the stone pillars as she always did. When she saw him, her face brightened with quiet relief. "You came," she said. Thomas forced a smile. "Of course. I told you I would." They walked together through the clearing. She asked him about his world again, about the skies filled with ships and the cities alive with voices. He answered, but his words were slower than before. His thoughts were clouded. At last, Alira stopped and looked at him closely. "Something troubles you. Your voice carries weight," Thomas sighed. "My people will leave soon. Our mission is almost finished." Alira's expression did not change at first, but her eyes grew darker. "You will leave," she repeated softly. "Yes," Thomas said. "In 2 days." For a long time she was silent. She turned away, her hand brushing the stone pillar. "I thought so. You are like the stars, always moving." Her words cut him deeper than he expected. He stepped closer. "Alira, I don't want to leave you. I want to stay, but my orders—" He trailed off. She looked at him again, her face calm but her voice quiet. "Orders are chains. Do you live for them, or do you live for what your heart sees?" Thomas could not answer. He felt torn in 2 directions. His duty pressed hard on one side, his bond with her pulling on the other. They walked to the lake and sat on the smooth stones by the shore. The water shimmered with light, reflecting the stars above. For a while, neither spoke. Finally, Alira broke the silence. "My people once faced such choices. We built ships, we traveled far. But we forgot why we traveled. We chased power, not meaning. That was our chain. And it destroyed us." Tomas listened, his chest tight. Alira continued, "If you leave, I will remain. I have always remained. But I hoped—" She stopped, her voice fading. "You hoped what?" Thomas asked. She looked into his eyes, her dark gaze steady. "I hoped you would not be like the others. I hoped you would stay." The words struck him like a wave. He felt the truth of them and his heart ached. He wanted to promise her everything, but the sound of the ship's engines waiting in the distance echoed in his mind. That night, Thomas returned to the camp. He could not sleep. He sat in the quiet corner of the ship, staring at the stars through the small window. His mind turned again and again to Alira's voice, to her hope. The next morning, he tried to speak with Hale. "Captain," Thomas began, "there's something you should know. This world is not empty. There are people here. Or at least one." Hale frowned. "Explain." Thomas told him about Alira, about the ruins, about her words. He described her loneliness, the fading history of her people, the chance to learn something no machine could record. But Hale shook his head. "We cannot risk contact. Our orders are clear. We are here to study, not to interfere. If her people are declining, that is their path. We cannot change it." Tomas's voice rose with frustration. "But we can help. We can give them knowledge, a chance to survive." "And what then?" Hale replied. "Do we take responsibility for them? Do we stay here forever? We are not saviors, Thomas. We are explorers. Remember your place. The words felt like a door slamming shut. Thomas left the cabin, anger and sorrow mixing inside him. Later that day, he returned to Alira. He told her what Hale had said, though he softened the words. Still, she understood. So your leaders fear us, she said quietly. They do not fear you, Thomas said. They fear what it would mean to help. They fear losing control. Alira stood at the edge of the clearing, her gaze fixed on the distant stars. Perhaps they are wise. To help is to change, and change is never safe. Thomas shook his head. It is not about safety. It is about doing what is right. Alira turned back to him, her eyes shining faintly. Then what will you choose, Thomas? Will you follow your orders or will you follow what you feel? He had no answer. His heart shouted one thing, his duty another. He was trapped in the space between. That evening they returned to the Hall of Memory in the valley. Alira touched the carvings with her glowing fingers, tracing the shapes of her people's journeys. Do you see? She asked. We once had everything, and yet we lost it because we forgot to hold on to what mattered. If your people forget too, you may lose yourselves as well. Her words stayed with him as they walked back through the silver forest. He felt the weight of history pressing on his shoulders, as though Alira's hope now rested in him. When Thomas returned to camp that night, the ship was alive with preparation. The engines hummed, systems checked, supplies packed. The crew spoke of leaving with excitement, but Thomas felt only dread. He lay awake in his bunk, staring at the ceiling, hearing Alira's voice over and over. I hoped you would stay. The next day would be their last on the planet. Thomas knew he had to make a choice. Stay with Alira and break every rule, or leave her behind and break his own heart. For the first time in his life, he wished he was not bound by orders. For the first time, he wondered if humanity's greatest strength was not in moving forward, but in choosing when to stop, when to stay, when to care. As the silver forest swayed in the wind, Thomas realized his dilemma was not just about Alira, it was about what it meant to be human. The silver forest seemed quieter than usual that morning. Thomas walked through it slowly, each step heavier than the last. He carried a small bag with samples for the ship, but his mind was far away. Today would be the day he had dreaded since he met Alira. The crew was busy with preparations. Engines had been tested, the liftoff sequence programmed, and supplies checked. Soon the ship would depart. Thomas had helped with the logistics, but now he wished he could escape responsibility, if only for a few more hours with her. He arrived at the clearing. Alira was already there, standing near the stone pillars. The glow from the trees highlighted her form, and the soft wind moved her hair. She looked calm, but her eyes betrayed a quiet sorrow. You are here, she said softly. I could not leave without saying goodbye, Thomas replied. She tilted her head. And yet you will leave. I have no choice, he said, though his voice trembled. Alira stepped closer, her hands brushing over the carvings on the pillars. I thought perhaps you would stay, that you would see that this place matters, that I matter. Thomas looked at her, feeling the weight of her words. He wanted to tell her everything, to speak of his heart, but the orders and the ship waiting for him loomed large. He had been trained to follow instructions, yet he had never faced a choice like this before. I do see it, Alira, he said finally. I see you in this place, and I care. But my duty, his voice caught. I cannot stay, she let the words settle. Her face remained calm, but a faint flicker of sadness passed through her eyes. Then you will go, she said simply. Yes, Tomas whispered. They walked together in silence toward the lake at the edge of the clearing. The water shimmered, reflecting both the silver trees and the twin moons above. Tomas wanted to memorize every detail, every movement of light and shadow. He wanted to carry it with him forever. Alira stopped by the lake and turned to him. I remember when I first saw you. You were curious, different from the others. You did not look at me as a stranger. You saw me as I am. Thomas knelt by the water, dipping his hand into the cool surface. And I remember thinking the same, that I had never met anyone like you. Not anywhere. Alira stepped closer. The glow from her skin reflected in the water, casting a gentle light around them. You have given me hope, she said. Hope that someone beyond my world still remembers what it means to care, to see, to listen. Thomas's heart ached. He wanted to promise her more than words could hold. He wanted to stay, to defy orders, to remain in the forest forever. But the reality of the ship waited, demanding his return. "I am sorry," he said. She shook her head slightly. "Do not be sorry for following what is right. But know this, Thomas. When you leave, a part of this world will leave with you, and a part of you will remain here, whether you know it or not." He looked into her eyes, searching for any sign that she would forgive him, that she would understand. "I will return," he said finally. "I do not know when, but I promise I will come back." Alira's lips curved into a faint smile, soft but tinged with sadness. "You promise?" "Yes," Thomas said firmly. She nodded. For a moment they both stood in silence, listening to the gentle ripple of the lake and the whispering of silver leaves above. Then, as Thomas turned to leave, she stepped closer. Her voice, low and filled with emotion, reached him. "I was hoping you'd stay." The words stopped him. His chest tightened. Every fiber of his being wanted to turn and stay, to forget the ship, the orders, everything. Yet he could not. The engines called, the crew waited, and he could not abandon his responsibility. Thomas swallowed hard. "I wish I could," he said, almost in a whisper. Alira reached out and lightly touched his arm. Her fingers were warm, and the glow of her skin made him feel alive in a way he had never experienced before. "I know," she said softly. "I understand. But I hoped." He nodded, though he could not smile. The ache in his heart was deep. He wanted to stay, yet he had to go. The choice felt like tearing a part of himself away. For a long moment they simply stood together. He wanted to memorize everything. Her face, the sound of her voice, the way the light caught her hair. He wanted to carry it with him, to keep it alive in his memory. Finally, he stepped back, slowly, as though pulling away would break the fragile thread between them. "I have to go," he said. Alira did not move. She watched him carefully, letting him leave without words of complaint or anger. Her face remained calm, but the faint flicker of light in her eyes betrayed her sadness. Thomas walked through the forest, each step harder than the last. Behind him, the clearing grew smaller, but the image of Alira standing there remained vivid in his mind. Her words echoed. "I was hoping you'd stay." He returned to the ship, his hands trembling slightly. The engines hummed, ready for liftoff. The crew noticed his hesitation, but he forced himself to act normally to hide the turmoil inside. He prepared the ship for departure, checked the systems, and took his seat in the control area. As the countdown began, Thomas thought of Alira. He thought of the silver forest, the stone pillars, the lake that shimmered under the twin moons. He thought of the hope she had placed in him and of the promise he had made to return. The engines roared to life, and the ship lifted from the surface of the planet. The forest receded below, the stone pillars shrinking into the distance. Thomas could still see her standing there, small but unbroken, her glow visible even from afar. He felt a deep ache in his chest. The choice to leave had been made, yet a part of him had stayed behind, tied to her, to the forest, to the hope she had given him. As the ship rose above the clouds, Thomas turned from the viewport and sat quietly. He could not erase the memory of her words. They would remain with him always, a reminder of the bond he had formed, of the connection between human and alien, between worlds that seemed so far apart yet had met in the quiet of the forest. Later, in the quiet moments of space travel, Thomas replayed their conversations in his mind. He remembered how she had shown him the ruins, told him stories of her people, and shared the memory of a world long past. He remembered her smile, soft but full of meaning, and her words, "I was hoping you'd stay." He realized that leaving had not been the end of their story. It was only a pause, and deep inside he understood that what mattered most was not the orders, not the mission, not the stars they traveled between. It was the choice to care, the courage to hold on, and the promise to return. The forest, the stone pillars, and Alira's presence had changed him. He would carry it forward, and when the time came, he would return to fulfill the promise he had made, to bring hope not only to her but to the memory of a people almost lost. As the ship moved further from the planet, Thomas looked out once more. The silver forest glimmered below, and he whispered quietly to himself, "I will come back. Alira, I will return." The words were a vow, a bridge between two worlds, and a reminder that humanity's strength was not only in exploration or discovery, but in the courage to follow the heart, even when the path was uncertain. And in the silence of space, Thomas knew one thing clearly. The story between him and Alira was far from over. The survey ship moved silently through space, the stars stretching endlessly in every direction. Thomas sat in the observation deck staring out at the distant planet. The silver forests, the lakes that shimmered under twin moons, the stone pillars, all of it remained etched in his memory. Every detail was vivid, every sound and scent carried with him, though he could no longer see or hear it. The ship hummed around him, the crew busy with post-mission tasks, but Thomas felt apart from it all. His thoughts remained with Alira, with the forest, with the promise he had made to return. Captain Hale approached him. "Thomas, you seem distracted," he said. "I am," Thomas admitted. "This mission, it is not just about collecting data. There is a life there, one life, and leaving it behind feels wrong." Hale studied him. "We cannot change everything. Our duty is to return to Earth and report. That is the mission. You know that." "Yes," Thomas said softly. "But I also know that humanity is more than duty. We are capable of hope, of courage, of connection. And I feel that this choice, what we do or do not do, matters more than reports or orders." Hale shook his head, though his eyes softened. "Be careful, Thomas, not everything can be saved." Thomas nodded. He did not need more warnings. He already knew. That night, Thomas went to the communication bay. He sat before the console, fingers hovering over the controls. He remembered Alira's words. "I was hoping you'd stay." They echoed in his mind like a call to action. He took a deep breath. The crew was asleep. The systems were quiet. He opened a secure channel, a small transmission just for her. The words flowed slowly, carefully, filled with meaning. "Alira," he said, his voice steady even as his heart raced. "I cannot stay now. I am bound to my people and my mission. But I promise I will return. I will bring knowledge, tools, and hope to help your people. I will not forget you or this world. You have shown me what it means to care, to remember, to be human. I will come back." He paused, letting the words sink into the signal. Then he sent images of Earth, forests, mountains, rivers, music, and songs. He hoped she would feel the life of his world, the hope he carried with him. On the distant planet, Alira received the transmission. She watched the images flicker in the air and listened to his voice. A spark of light returned to her eyes, faint but real. The hope she had almost lost stirred again. Meanwhile, aboard the ship, Thomas felt a shift inside him. Though he had left physically, part of him remained with her. And in that connection, he found courage. He realized that humanity's strength was not only in exploration, not only in discovery, but in the choice to act, to care, to carry hope to those who need it. Over the next few weeks, as the ship traveled through space, Thomas began to plan. He pored over resources, knowledge, and tools. He wrote down strategies to help Alira, to help her people preserve what remained. He created detailed simulations, prepared equipment, and made notes about communication and education. Every free moment was spent thinking about her and the silver forests. The crew noticed his dedication to the project. Hale questioned it once, but Thomas calmly explained that the mission had taught him something greater. "Exploration is not just about discovery," he said. "It is about connection. It is about leaving something behind that matters, something that can last." Hale studied him, his eyes reflecting understanding. "Then make it count," he said simply. Thomas smiled faintly. He could not see Alira, could not touch her or walk among the stone pillars, but he felt her presence in his heart. Every decision, every action he took was tied to the promise he had made. Weeks passed, and the ship returned to Earth. Thomas reported the mission as usual, documenting the planet, its geology, atmosphere, and history, but hidden in his personal logs were the details of Alira, her people, the ruins, and the hope he had found in the silver forest. He did not share this with everyone, knowing that only a few would understand. Once the ship landed, Thomas went straight to his quarters. He reviewed his plans again, adjusting and improving them. He created a small but dedicated team to prepare for a return mission. They trained, studied, and learned about ways to help an alien civilization without causing harm. Thomas led them, driven not by orders but by the bond he had formed and the promise he had made. Months passed. He returned to the ship many times, preparing for the journey back. Finally, the day arrived when everything was ready. Supplies, technology, and knowledge were loaded onto a new craft. Thomas stepped aboard, feeling both excitement and nervousness. He knew this trip was more than a mission. It was a chance to fulfill the promise of hope, to honor the trust Alira had given him. The engines roared to life, and the ship lifted off, leaving Earth behind. Thomas watched the blue planet shrink below, thinking of the forests, rivers, and people who had raised him. And then he thought of the silver forest, the stone pillars, the lake, and Alira. As the ship traveled faster than light, Thomas reviewed the plans one last time. Every calculation, every tool, every piece of knowledge was meant to give her people a chance to survive, to remember, and to grow. He smiled faintly. Humanity had reached far into the stars, but this mission was different. It was about heart, courage, and the choice to make a difference. Finally, after long months of travel, the ship entered the orbit of the silver world. The forests shimmered below, more beautiful than he had remembered. The stone pillars stood tall, and the lake reflected the light of the twin moons. Thomas rushed down to the clearing. Alira was there, standing as she had always stood, waiting. Her eyes widened as she saw him, and a light of recognition and joy crossed her face. "Thomas," she whispered, her voice carrying both relief and wonder. "I came back," he said, stepping closer. "I promised, and I have returned." Alira's glow brightened. She reached out, and Thomas took her hand gently. For a moment the world seemed still. The forest, the ruins, and the lake surrounded them, but their focus was only on each other. "I have brought knowledge," Thomas said. "Tools to help your people remember and thrive. You will not be alone anymore." Alira studied him, her eyes reflecting the depth of hope and gratitude she had held for so long. "You kept your promise," she said softly. "You are human." "Yes," Thomas said. "And humans do not forget. We do not abandon what matters. We stay, we care, and we protect what is important. That is who we are." Together they walked through the clearing, exploring the ruins once more. Thomas shared every piece of technology, every plan he had brought, showing Alira how her people could preserve knowledge and rebuild what had been lost. She listened carefully, learning quickly. The glow of her skin seemed brighter with every new idea, and Thomas felt hope spread through the forest like sunlight. For the first time, the ruins felt alive again. The pillars no longer held only memory, they held possibility. The lake shimmered brighter, reflecting a future that had been uncertain but now had direction. As night fell, Thomas and Alira stood together by the water. The twin moons cast silver light across the surface. Thomas looked at her and she looked back at him, their bond stronger than it had ever been. "You believed," she said softly. "Yes," Thomas replied, "and hope is never wasted when we act. That is the gift of being human." Alira smiled fully now, a light of understanding and gratitude in her eyes. "Then let us begin," she said. "Let us rebuild together." Thomas nodded. He knew this was only the beginning. The forest, the ruins, and the people of this planet would thrive not because of chance, but because someone had chosen to care. And in that choice, he realized the truth of humanity, that even in the vastness of the stars, the greatest strength was not in ships, technology, or distance. It was in the courage to hope, the courage to act, and the courage to make a promise and keep it. The silver forest glowed under the twin moons as Thomas and Alira walked side by side. Humanity had arrived not as conquerors or visitors, but as helpers and friends, and the story of hope, connection, and courage would live on, stronger than the silence that had once filled the forest. The galaxy had witnessed the strength of the human heart, and the future of a people almost forgotten had been saved, all because one man chose to return.